Pythagoras, the brilliant Greek mind who unlocked the mathematical secrets of the universe and founded a mystical brotherhood, changed the course of human history forever. In the vast and fascinating history of humanity, there are figures whose influence and legacy have endured through the centuries, whose ideas and discoveries have transcended the borders of time and space. He was reserved and thoughtful, and he believed that harmony and balance were the key to a full and satisfying life. Many people know him as the great mathematician, but this Greek wise man also made fundamental discoveries in philosophy, music, and astronomy. Pythagoras was a man of profound wisdom. He trusted in the virtue of knowledge and in the search for truth through reasoning and observation. A thinker whose life and work continue to inspire generations of scientists, philosophers, and artists. This documentary is a tribute to his genius, a deep exploration of his life and his legacy, an odyssey through the mysteries and wonders of Pythagorean thought. Pythagoras of Samos was born around the year 570 BC on the island of Samos, located in the Aegean Sea. This island, located off the coast of Asia Minor, was known for its vibrant cultural and commercial activity, an environment that undoubtedly influenced the early life of Pythagoras. His family had a significant impact on his formation. His father, Menesarchus, was a gem merchant and gem engraver. His profession allowed him to travel extensively, bringing with him a wealth of knowledge and experiences from diverse cultures. Thus, he not only ensured the economic stability of the family, but also provided his son with a broad and enriching perspective of the world. These travels and the contact with different cultures fostered the curiosity and the love for knowledge in Pythagoras from an early age. His mother, Pythais, also played a crucial role in his life. Although the details about her life are less known, it is probable that her influence on his education and development was considerable. Pythais may have transmitted values and teachings that complemented the intellectual formation provided by his father. Pythagoras had at least two brothers, although their names and specific details of their lives are not clearly documented in historical records. At the age of 5 years, he already showed signs of an exceptional intelligence. He was a curious child, with an insatiable thirst for knowledge. His parents, recognizing his potential, made sure that he received a quality education. In those times, education was not accessible to everyone, but the position of Mnesarchus allowed Pythagoras to access resources and teachers that most children of his age did not have. His initial education was diverse and rigorous. In his home, he was taught the fundamentals of reading, writing, and arithmetic. These early years were crucial for developing his capacity for logical and analytical thinking. Menesarchus, with his vast experience as a merchant, also taught him the importance of observation and attention to detail, essential skills for his future development as a mathematician and philosopher. One of the most fascinating aspects of his education was his early exposure to different cultures and knowledge through the travels of his father. Menesarchus, on his trading journeys, took him to diverse cities and regions where the young man could interact with people of different cultures and learn from their traditions and knowledge. At the age of 7, he began to study under the tutelage of some of the greatest thinkers of his time. One of his first teachers was Thales of Miletus, a renowned philosopher and mathematician who introduced Pythagoras into the world of geometry and astronomy, disciplines that would play a fundamental role in his later thought. Under the guidance of Thales, Pythagoras learned to appreciate the beauty of mathematics and its capacity to describe the natural world in a precise and logical way. In addition, Pythagoras also studied with Anaximander, another prominent philosopher and cosmologist. From him, Pythagoras learned about the nature of the infinite and the structure of the cosmos. These teachings profoundly influenced his vision of the universe and led him to develop his own theory of harmony and cosmic order. His influence can also be seen in the belief of Pythagoras, in the transmigration of the soul, and his interest in the mysteries of existence. By the age of 10 years, Pythagoras had already acquired a solid foundation in mathematics, philosophy, and astronomy. However, his thirst for knowledge was not limited to these disciplines. He also showed a great interest in music, art, and literature. His education in these areas was equally rigorous, and it is said that he had a natural ability for music, which would later influence his theory of the harmony of the spheres. The island of Samos, with its rich cultural tradition and its strategic location in the Aegean Sea, provided him with an ideal environment for his intellectual development. The interaction with merchants, sailors, and scholars who visited the island exposed him to a wide range of ideas and knowledge. This diversity of influences helped to mold his thinking and to develop a holistic vision of the world. By the age of 12 years, Pythagoras was already known in Samos as a prodigy. His capacity to solve complex mathematical problems and his profound knowledge of philosophy and astronomy distinguished him from his peers. Historical records suggest that at this age he began to teach other children of his age, sharing the knowledge he had acquired and developing his pedagogical skills. His education was not limited to formal instruction. He also learned a lot from the observation of nature and experimentation. He spent long hours studying the stars, the plants, and the animals, seeking to understand the underlying principles that governed the natural world. By 15 years of age, he had already reached a level of knowledge and understanding that far exceeded that of most adults of his time. His studies in mathematics, philosophy, astronomy, music, and other disciplines had prepared him for an extraordinary destiny. However, his intellectual journey was far from over. The following years would see him embark on new journeys and studies that would further expand his understanding of the universe and lead him to become one of the greatest thinkers in history. Pythagoras saw his youth tinged by a series of events and stories that over time have been transformed into legends and myths. Among the most famous is the story of his journey to Egypt, a voyage that would profoundly influence his thought and mark a milestone in his development as a philosopher and mathematician. Legend has it that, while still young, he was guided by a burning desire for knowledge toward the ancient lands of Egypt. At that time, Egypt was considered a vast reservoir of ancient wisdom and mysteries. It is said that Pythagoras, driven by his thirst to learn, decided to undertake this journey to know the secrets that the Egyptian priests jealously guarded. Accompanied by his father, Menazarchus, he crossed seas and deserts, facing countless challenges until reaching the doors of the sacred temples of Egypt. Once there, according to the legend, he sought the tutelage of the priests of Thebes and Memphis. However, these guardians of knowledge did not offer their teachings to just anyone. To be admitted into their circles, he had to prove his worth. The story tells that he was subjected to a series of rigorous tests designed to evaluate not only his intellect, but also his spiritual strength and his perseverance. He passed all the tests successfully, earning the respect and admiration of the priests. During his stay in Egypt, he was initiated into the religious and scientific mysteries of the ancient civilization. He learned about sacred geometry, the secrets of monumental architecture, and the astronomical principles that governed the lives of the Egyptians. One of the most fascinating stories of this period relates that Pythagoras, upon contemplating the pyramids, had a revelation about the relationship between numbers and geometric shapes, an intuition that would later become the basis of his famous theorem. Another legend speaks of his time in Babylon, where it is said he was taken after the Persian invasion of Egypt. In Babylon, he immersed himself in the study of Babylonian astronomy and mathematics, which were extremely advanced for their time. It is said that it was in Babylon where he had his first contact with the theory of numbers and proportions, concepts that would be fundamental in his philosophy. The Babylonian sages, impressed by his intellect and his passion for knowledge, taught him about the celestial movements and the cycles of time, knowledge that he would take back with him to Greece. The legends also recount mystical encounters that Pythagoras had during his youth. One of the best known is the story of his visit to the Oracle of Delphi. According to this legend, seeking answers to his deepest questions about life and the universe, he traveled to Delphi to consult the famous oracle. The Pythia, the priestess of the oracle, received him and, in a prophetic trance, revealed to him that he was destined to become a great teacher and that his name would be remembered for centuries. This prophecy, the legend says, inspired Pythagoras to move forward with his search for truth, despite the numerous obstacles he would face. The stories about Pythagoras also include accounts of his ascetic and disciplined life. It is said that from a young age, he practiced a strict vegetarian diet and abstained from consuming certain foods, such as beans, due to his beliefs about purity and spirituality. After many years of study and exploration in places like Egypt, Babylon, and other parts of the Mediterranean, Pythagoras decided to return to Greece, driven by the need to spread the teachings and knowledge he had accumulated. This was no ordinary return. Pythagoras had accumulated a vast amount of knowledge and experiences that had molded his vision of the world and his understanding of the universe. Upon his return, his mind was full of revolutionary ideas about nature, mathematics, and philosophy. The journey of Pythagoras back to Greece was an odyssey in itself. Departing from the edges of the known world, where he had studied with the Egyptian priests and the Babylonian astronomers, he thus undertook an arduous journey across the Aegean Sea and the Greek lands. This journey was full of challenges, both physical and intellectual, that tested his endurance and determination. However, every step of his way was guided by his desire to establish a center of knowledge and wisdom that could benefit humanity. Upon arriving in Greece, he did not settle in his native Samos, but directed his attention toward Croton, a city in southern Italy, in the region of Magna Graecia. The choice of Croton was not accidental. This Greek city was known for its prosperous community and its intellectual openness. Croton offered the ideal environment so that Pythagoras could found his school and attract followers who shared his love for knowledge and the search for truth. The arrival in Croton was a significant event. His reputation as a great wise man and scholar already preceded him, and the people of Croton waited anxiously to hear his teachings. Here he began to impart his knowledge in public squares and temples, capturing the attention of everyone with his eloquence and charisma. His magnetic presence and his ability to communicate complex ideas in an accessible way quickly won him a group of dedicated disciples. One of the first acts of Pythagoras in Croton was the founding of his famous school, a center of learning that was not only dedicated to formal education, but also to the spiritual and moral formation of its members. The Pythagorean school, as it came to be known, became a meeting place for those who sought a deeper understanding of the world and the universe. The school was organized as a closed community, where the members lived, worked, and studied together, following an austere and disciplined lifestyle. Life in the school was governed by a set of strict rules that covered all aspects of daily life, from diet and clothing to conduct and interpersonal relationships. Thus, this community quickly became a beacon of knowledge and wisdom, attracting students and philosophers from all over Greece and beyond. The influence of the school spread rapidly, and its teachings began to have a significant effect on the philosophical and scientific thought of the time. Pythagoras and his disciples dedicated themselves to the study of various disciplines, including mathematics, philosophy, music, and astronomy, with a focus on the interconnection of all things and the search for harmony in the universe. In the Pythagorean community, the organization of roles of men and women reflected the philosophical and ethical principles of the school. Pythagoras believed in the equality of all souls, which translated into a community structure that allowed the active participation of men and women in various areas. The inclusion of women was notable, since many other Greek philosophical schools excluded women. Here he valued female contributions, allowing them to participate fully in community and academic life. An outstanding figure among the Pythagorean women was Theano, wife of Pythagoras and distinguished disciple. Theano not only participated actively in the community, but also contributed to the development of Pythagorean teachings, especially in ethics and philosophy. Her role is emblematic of the respect and importance that was given to women in the community. Women had access to the same education as men, studying mathematics, philosophy, music, and other disciplines. Here, it was believed that the search for knowledge and truth was a universal right and responsibility. This educational equality promoted the integral development of all its members. The specific roles of men and women in the community varied depending on their individual abilities and talents. Men often assumed roles in teaching and administration, while women also played roles in leadership and teaching. In everyday life, both men and women participated in the tasks necessary for the functioning of the school, including food preparation, facility maintenance, the organization of ceremonies, and resource management. Women also participated in the rituals and spiritual practices of the community, contributing to spiritual life. This participation reinforced their connection with the divine and underscored gender equality in the search for spiritual elevation and internal harmony. In addition, they contributed to the development of ethics and morals in the community. They were seen as guardians of purity and morality, helping to maintain the high ethical standards of the school. The egalitarian approach of the Pythagorean community also had broader implications for Greek society of the time. By demonstrating that men and women could collaborate and contribute equitably, he challenged traditional gender norms. This equality did not imply a homogenization of roles. The Pythagoreans respected and valued individual differences. Equality was understood as the recognition and valorization of the capabilities and contributions of each individual. The impact of the Pythagorean community and its inclusive approach toward gender roles extended beyond its own existence, influencing other philosophical and educational communities and leaving a lasting mark on the history of Western thought. The Pythagorean school was not only a place of learning, but also a center of innovation and discovery. Under the guidance of Pythagoras, the members of the school made important advances in mathematics and science. The return of Pythagoras to Greece and his settlement in Croton were also marked by the introduction of his ideas about music and harmony. He had discovered that musical intervals could be expressed in terms of simple numerical relationships, and that these relationships were the basis of musical harmony. This theory not only had an impact on music, but it also influenced Pythagorean philosophy and cosmology. In addition to his intellectual impact, he also had a significant social impact in Croton. The community promoted equality, justice, and mutual respect, values that resonated in the society of the time and contributed to the cohesion and progress of the city. The community life and ethical practices of the Pythagoreans served as a model for other groups and communities, demonstrating how philosophy and ethics could be integrated into daily life to create a more harmonious and just society. The school stood out not only for its teachings, but also for its unique community structure. Pythagoras created a closed community where the disciples lived under a strict regime of rules and practices. This structure not only fostered discipline and purity of life, but it also created an environment conducive to intellectual and spiritual development. Life was organized around principles of harmony, balance, and justice, values that Pythagoras considered fundamental for personal and collective growth. One of the most notable characteristics of the Pythagorean community was its vegetarian diet. Pythagoras promoted vegetarianism not only for health reasons, but also for ethical and spiritual convictions. He believed in the purity of the body and the soul, and considered that abstaining from meat was a way to avoid violence and animal suffering. This practice was also linked to his beliefs about reincarnation and the transmigration of souls, since he maintained that all living beings were interconnected in an eternal cycle of birth and rebirth. The members also followed a code of conduct that ranged from honesty and justice to moderation and self-discipline. This code not only regulated interpersonal relationships within the community, but it also guided the behavior of the Pythagoreans in their interaction with the outside world. Pythagoras introduced the practice of silence as an integral part of life in the school. The Pythagoreans practiced periods of silence that could last several months, a discipline that fostered internal reflection and self-control. Silence was seen as a tool for the purification of the soul and mental clarity, allowing the members of the community to concentrate on their studies and on philosophical contemplation. This practice, although rigorous, was considered essential for spiritual development and personal growth. The Pythagorean school stood out for its focus on research and experimentation. Pythagoras and his disciples studied in diverse fields, from astronomy and mathematics to music and medicine. This dedication allowed the school to make important advances in various fields of knowledge, contributing significantly to the development of science and philosophy in antiquity. The tetractys is a triangular figure formed by 10 points, arranged in 4 rows, 1, 2, 3, and 4 points respectively in each row, adding up to a total of 10. This symbol had a profound esoteric and mathematical meaning for the Pythagoreans, representing the harmony and order of the universe, the structure of reality, and the connection between the macrocosm and the microcosm. From the mathematical point of view, it symbolized the first 4 natural numbers, which added together give 10, a number considered perfect and complete. This sum, 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, was seen as a representation of totality and perfection. The Pythagoreans saw in this figure a representation of the fundamental proportions and relationships that structure the universe. On a more esoteric level, it was seen as a mystical symbol that contained the secrets of the cosmos, encapsulating the laws of nature and universal principles. In astronomy, it symbolized the organization of the cosmos in terms of mathematical proportions and relationships. The Pythagorean vision of the cosmos was based on the belief that the universe was structured according to mathematical and harmonic principles. This conception implied that reality itself was a manifestation of harmony and order, principles that could be understood and expressed through mathematics. The principle of harmony was fundamental for Pythagorean cosmology. According to this vision, everything in the universe was interconnected and organized according to precise mathematical proportions. The Pythagorean conception of an ordered and harmonious cosmos profoundly influenced the development of Western philosophy and science. Plato, for example, adopted many Pythagorean ideas, including the importance of mathematics for understanding reality. The vision of a universe governed by mathematical laws also prefigured the development of modern physics, which seeks to describe the behavior of the cosmos in terms of mathematical relationships. The theory of the harmony of the spheres is perhaps one of the best-known contributions of the Pythagorean school. This theory maintained that the celestial bodies, as they moved in their orbits, produced a celestial music inaudible to the human ear. This music reflected the harmony and order of the cosmos, being an expression of the mathematical proportions that governed the movement of the planets and the stars. The idea of the harmony of the spheres has its roots in the observation of mathematical proportions in music. Pythagoras discovered that musical consonances could be expressed in terms of simple numerical relationships and extended this idea to the cosmos. The doctrine of metempsychosis, also known as the transmigration of souls or reincarnation, is one of the most fascinating and fundamental teachings of Pythagorean philosophy. This belief maintains that the soul is immortal, and after the death of the physical body, it transmigrates or reincarnates in another body. According to Pythagorean teachings, the soul is immortal and pre-existent. Before incarnating in a human body, the soul exists in a pure and divine state. The incarnation in a physical body is considered a descent or a fall of the soul from its original state of purity. This descent is seen as an opportunity for the soul to learn, grow, and purify itself through the experiences of material life. Pythagorean spirituality, centered on the doctrine of metempsychosis, also included the belief in the existence of planes or levels of reality beyond the physical world. Pythagoras and his followers maintained that the soul, through its process of purification and reincarnation, ascended to increasingly higher and more subtle planes of existence. These higher planes were considered closer to the original state of purity and divinity of the soul. The legacy of the doctrine of metempsychosis in Pythagorean philosophy lasted long beyond the life of Pythagoras and his original community. The ideas about reincarnation and the transmigration of the soul continued to influence diverse philosophical and religious traditions, from Platonism and Neoplatonism to esoteric and mystical thought in the Middle Ages and the Renaissance. To delve even deeper into the importance of numbers in Pythagorean philosophy, it is essential to explore how these mathematical principles influenced the different areas of knowledge and the community life of the Pythagoreans. The vision that numbers are the essence of all things not only guided their scientific and philosophical research, but it also molded their ethics, their spirituality, and their interaction with the world. Pythagorean numerology was based on the belief that numbers possess qualitative and symbolic meanings that reflect fundamental aspects of reality. This numerology was not limited to a mere enumeration or calculation, but explored the inherent properties and symbolic relationships of numbers. The number 1 represents unity and the origin of all things. It is the principle of singularity and the source of all multiplicity. In Pythagorean philosophy, the number 1 symbolizes the divine principle that underlies all creation and the starting point from which everything else emerges. Unity is considered perfect and complete in itself, and all other entities are derived from this primordial unity. The number 2 symbolizes duality and opposition, reflecting the presence of contrasting pairs in nature, such as day and night, masculine and feminine, good and evil. This duality is essential for the existence of multiplicity and diversity in the world. The number 3 represents harmony and balance, seen in the stability of the tripod or the triad of father, mother, and child. The number 3 is considered sacred and complete, symbolizing the synthesis of unity and duality into a new form of totality. In Pythagorean cosmology, the number 3 is also associated with cosmic harmony and the structure of the universe. The number 4 symbolizes justice and stability. It is associated with the Tetractys, which represents the basis of creation and the structure of the cosmos. The Tetractys, with its 10 points arranged in an equilateral triangle, encapsulates the idea of totality and perfection in the cosmic order. The number 4 is also fundamental in geometry and proportions, reflecting structure and balance in nature. The number 5 is associated with life and health. It represents the balance between the material and the spiritual, and is considered a symbol of vitality and growth. The pentagram, a 5-pointed geometric figure, was used by the Pythagoreans as a symbol of health and protection. The number 6 represents beauty and harmony. It is considered a perfect number since it is equal to the sum of its divisors, 1, 2, and 3. This perfection reflects harmony and proportion in nature, and the number 6 is associated with symmetry and aesthetics. The number 7 is considered sacred and is associated with perfection and the cycle of life, as seen in the 7 days of the week, the 7 musical notes, and the 7 celestial bodies known in antiquity. The number 7 also has a mystical and spiritual meaning, symbolizing the connection between the human and the divine. The number 8 symbolizes love and friendship. It represents the duplication of the 4 and is associated with balance and stability in relationships. The number 9 represents completeness and truth. It is the last of the single digits and symbolizes the end of one cycle and the beginning of another. In the Pythagorean vision, the number 9 is also associated with wisdom and introspection. The number 10 is the number of the Tetractys and represents perfection and totality. It is considered the number of fullness and realization, encapsulating the essence of creation and the structure of the cosmos. Education in the Pythagorean school centered on the study of numbers and mathematics as a means to achieve knowledge and wisdom. The Pythagoreans believed that the study of mathematics not only developed the mind, but also purified the soul and prepared the individual for the contemplation of higher truths. Geometry, in particular, was a fundamental discipline in Pythagorean education. Geometry allowed understanding the spatial relationships and proportions that structured the universe. The study of geometry and mathematics was seen as a path toward understanding cosmic harmony and union with the divine. Pythagorean education promoted a holistic approach to knowledge, integrating the study of numbers with music, philosophy, and astronomy. The Pythagorean theorem is one of the most important and well-known concepts in mathematics, especially in geometry. It establishes a fundamental relationship between the sides of a right triangle, which has a 90-degree angle. The theorem states that in any right triangle, the square of the hypotenuse, the side opposite the right angle, is equal to the sum of the squares of the other two sides. This theorem has many practical applications in daily life and in diverse disciplines, such as architecture and construction, to calculate lengths and make sure that corners are perfectly straight. The arrival of Pythagoras in Croton, a prosperous city in Magna Graecia, marked the beginning of an era of intellectual and spiritual transformation. His charisma and profound knowledge attracted numerous followers, forming a community. However, the growing influence of Pythagoras and his brotherhood soon awakened suspicions among the political leaders and the elite of Croton. The power structure in the city was threatened by the radical and reformist ideas of the Pythagoreans. The opposition culminated in a violent confrontation. Historical accounts, although shrouded in myth, speak of a revolt led by Cylon, a prominent Crotonian citizen, backed by other aristocrats who saw Pythagoras as an existential threat. The Pythagoreans were attacked during one of their meetings, and many perished in the massacre. Pythagoras, according to the chronicles, managed to escape, but his refuge was fleeting. This episode of brutality and persecution forced Pythagoras to abandon Croton. His exile was not just a geographic event, but a symbol of the resistance of knowledge and philosophy in the face of oppression. His legacy survived despite the adversity, and his influence endured in the minds of his followers and in the generations to come. The road to exile was arduous and full of uncertainty. According to some chronicles, Pythagoras initially headed toward Tarentum, a nearby city that was also part of Magna Graecia. However, the shadow of persecution followed him closely, and soon he had to continue his pilgrimage toward Metapontum, a city that finally offered him the necessary shelter. In Metapontum, he found a new home where he could settle and continue with his philosophical work. Far from succumbing to discouragement, Pythagoras gathered new disciples and rebuilt his community. The Pythagorean brotherhood resurged with renewed vigor, keeping alive the principles of harmony, justice, and knowledge that had been the heart of his philosophy. After the expulsion from Croton and the establishment of a new home in Metapontum, Pythagoras continued to dedicate himself to teaching and philosophical reflection, further consolidating his legacy. However, his life, marked by wisdom and adversity, was reaching its twilight. The last years of Pythagoras were a combination of contemplative seclusion and continuous pedagogical influence until he finally met his end, leaving an indelible mark on the history of humanity. Pythagoras died in the year 495 BC. Approximately 2,519 years have passed since his departure. His legacy, as one of the greatest philosophers and mathematicians in history, endures. If you enjoyed exploring the incredible life and mind of Pythagoras with us today, please make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments below.